Hello and welcome back to Planet Coaster. We are continuing off from last time. We were going to be building kind of a larger structure today. This one is going to be the town hall for the haunted area. And the town hall is going to be capping off this upper section and also will be the final building kind of on the main path before we go back to the regular Renaissance Fair theme and park elements. So down below in the valley there will be the jousting arena and game section, and then it'll just start looping back around to the other side. So this haunted style and like abandoned kind of old town hall is it's definitely a good size and shape to kind of fill in and surround the coaster station itself. The coaster that we're going to be using is kind of just the single rail coaster, as I feel like we can make that gentle enough and it won't look quite as out of place, because coasters aren't really in a Renaissance Fair. In fact, even me putting one in is not really what I plan to do, but I think you guys have been calling for a coaster for so long that I figured I might as well finally put one in there. The overall design is that there's going to be kind of this large kind of front porch section with an upper balcony area and very thick kind of supports and columns and arches in that area that will be kind of breaking up the lower section and upper section. The front will also have a clock tower added on to that. And then these main columns here, I didn't want to use the thinner kind of columns that just come base into the game. What I wanted to do was actually go ahead and build something about the size of a quarter grid tile. And in doing so, you can kind of align your columns with the grid itself a little bit easier. And then using copy and paste, you can kind of move things around. As you can see, the roof line is going to be really flush to those big, large columns. And then because we have that empty space, we can actually use the larger windows, which is pretty nice. And even the really large kind of fantasy castle door on the upper section, maybe when the town was active and less abandoned, the mayor could have actually come out and used that as a proper stage to address kind of the townsfolk. So this is kind of on the back side of Bran Castle, which is pretty cool that the town surrounding it is kind of fitting with Dracula in the sense that everything's kind of dark and dreary and not really pristine. Though initially, of course, we're going to be building these using more of a pristine method, and then we'll be going back into it and making it look a little bit more dirty and run down. Though we won't be finishing all the details. I wanted to get a little bit on there just so I can kind of figure out how things are going to look, and then after we finish the coaster part to it, I'll have to go back in and clean it up, or mess it up, I guess, in this case, just because I don't know where the coaster's going yet, and I don't know how it's going to interact with the building, and so we're just kind of lightly going over these areas. So the front, with those heavy columns and this kind of slightly Roman-esque kind of upper overhang, which is pretty standard for town hall like elements. This is where the clock face is going to be. We're just using some miscellaneous objects to bring out a little bit of the wall to actually hang the clock on, and we'll put some decoration around it later, I think off camera, just to make it less gray. It's a really gray building, but I think it's supposed to be. Town halls and civic buildings tend to be rather plain, not so much in the layers, but plain in terms of color and stuff. Now we're setting up the large windows on the wings of the town hall, and we'll be copying and pasting these over and around and adjusting the color of them as we go. I didn't want to have that brick everywhere, and so we're going to end up covering that up a little bit just so that we can get some different elements involved into the structure, as using too much of the plain castle brick can be a little repetitive, and using upside down arches here can provide a little bit extra detail. And I do like to use the tops just so we can fatten out the foundation around certain elements and just to make things look a little thicker. We will be surrounding these large upper windows with some dark wood trim, just because I feel like there needs to be a little bit of a color break between the light and the gray. So having a dark wood really kind of sinks in those sections, and I think brings out some of the detail a little bit better from a distance, which is something to consider. And I think eventually here, after the speed build section, I'll actually go back in and color those to be a dark gray window itself, just so that looks even more recessed into the wall and a little bit more unique. The roof, very simple roof. The wings have a flat roof and just the nice kind of railing going around. The sides of the peak here will have two kind of dormer windows and then a peak to either side as well, just to give kind of a larger roof section splitting off into the wings. And it's going to be a rather square building. We're only doing the front right now. I don't know quite how I want to handle the back side, because that's kind of where the coaster is going to enter and leave the station. It's actually going to go out the back. And I'm thinking about building like a forest out there that the coaster goes through instead of having the coaster go through the park itself. Just because I still not 100% sold on having a coaster in Renaissance Fair. And so we're going to be kind of avoiding that by pushing it onto the exterior and possibly building more of a haunted forest that's going through more so than the park. Again, copy and paste, really an important feature, and copying and pasting things around is going to save you a whole lot of time. In doing so, make sure your grids are still aligned and everything like that, and then also realize that because it's not in the center here, I'm having to actually rebuild one of the sections, but the little bit on this side here didn't take too long to just throw back together and recreate the simple pattern on the other side. Very repetitive kind of details, but that's something that you would see probably in a town hall. Very kind of uniformed structures with columns kind of breaking up the main surface itself. It's going to have a garden to the right side here, just with a low-lying wall, very similar to, say, the graveyard. And I was thinking about maybe putting a fountain in front of the build here, but I don't like how any of this really fit, and I still don't really like any of the fountain decorations, like the statues and stuff. Really, just, to me, don't go with anything. They're fine by themselves, but as soon as you try and make them match a building or try and make them match something else, I feel like they always feel out of place and just kind of tacked on. And so instead of a fountain, what we're going to do is make a simple tree, kind of almost like maybe this was the town tree that it was founded on, and it was the original tree in the area, possibly. There could be some lore attached to it, and who knows. You can always make something up if that's something you want to do. And in doing so, you can use dead trees to convey how creepy the area is more. So I'm happy to do that. We'll be ending up putting a path into that area a little bit, maybe some few benches and things, just so they have a little extra place to go and interact with the building when they're not just in queue for the coaster itself. Over here, there are some vines going up, various standards of what we've been doing in the rest of the area, and getting this to climb the walls and really break down some of the structures. I was also thinking about maybe boarding up some of the windows, but that looked a little too weird. I think because it's a civic building, you wouldn't expect them to board up the windows at all. You might just leave them, and they might end up with broken windows more so than boarded and covered windows. Some ruined scaffolding at the lower section. They could have been repairing or trying to maintain the building as best as possible, but over time maybe that scaffolding was just left and abandoned, leaning against the side of the wall itself. Here's that boarding attempt, and it just didn't feel quite right for the rest of the building itself, because they're just so little wooden elements that I went in and just colored the windows dark. The roof itself, I wasn't quite sure for the roof color. I wanted something dark, but with a tint of color, and then a lot of the roofing elements kind of don't match each other from the different types depending on what color you pick. And so the best thing that I came up with was to make the roof kind of green, which is pretty interesting. We haven't really had many green roofing elements, and that'll be it for pretty much the speed build section. So let's go ahead and take a look at it in real time. Alright, here we are in real time. You'll notice that our FPS is really kind of going back and forth at this point. The prop count on this structure alone is 1092, and obviously with all the other structures behind us, if I spun around, you'll notice the FPS drop. What we have here and what I've added is a little bit of a flat ride. You guys actually wanted something maybe to fit the theme of the spooky area, and so this brain in the jar kind of going around with its own kind of sinister music I think fits as well as we can. There's no haunted house in the game, which I think would be a great boon to this area, but you know, it is what it is, and you can fit what you can where you can. It's missing its light decoration. I might try and maybe continue some of the graveyard elements through here, or possibly just more trees and things, just because more greenery is always nice, especially to fill in areas. So out front here, using a lot more of that fencing to really frame the front yard of the town hall. And I even put some of our benches in and kind of broke them up and ran some roots and thorns through them, almost as if they were the reason this thing started to break apart in the way it did. And just plenty of this overgrowth area and some little details. So this is going to end up being kind of the main theme around the whole structure itself. But again, I didn't want to finish wrapping around here just because the coaster, I just don't know how this is going to work yet. So this is a problem we had to solve here within the next couple episodes and get that built. I do, of course, need some suggestions for it just because I'm still not comfortable doing a coaster. It's not my thing. I just don't have the mindset for it. I don't feel half the time. The building itself, though, rather straightforward. I do like the clock tower with the kind of decorative arch elements around it. I think it looks rather gothic, and town halls can look gothic in nature a little bit, and a little darker and older looking the better is essentially what we're going for. The pathway up, of course, is the exit and entrance. It's a relatively short queue, but in my mind, as long as the queue is long enough to hold 2 load full of people, that's fine. And then we might even build a small holding section, so we might have 2 coasters going at the same time, so that we have less, maybe a little bit of a quicker turnaround for the guests. And so a shorter queue might end up working on it and paying off in the long run. Here's another look at this is kind of what it's going to look like properly after a while, just this overgrown kind of creepy look. And even from a distance, if you kind of zoom back here and come into the town, you can see it definitely has a nice presence and weighty feel from afar. And so I think it's a relatively successful build. Of course, suggestions always nice. People buying some drinks in this area. People are actually finally moving and coming to this section of the park because we're up to 2,000 guests, and so there's reason for them to come over, especially because of the ride as well. And I think that's going to do us for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching as always. If you all enjoy Planet Coaster, feel free to leave a like. That's how I know how well the series is going, and if you guys are engaged and like the build and episodes, feel free to check out the other episodes if you're new. You can go ahead and watch how pretty much this whole park is built and constructed from scratch. Go ahead and leave a comment down below on what you guys think and what might be needed, added, changed, etc. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next episode.